Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and yeah, we're having a couple of special Sunday videos. And yeah, we're still doing the whole, live thing. I think I'll be able to get the new monitor soon, so we can go back to the other format, the one that people seem to like a little bit more. But, hey, this is working for the time being, right? I mean, news story is a news story, right? But anyway, you know how like a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, hey Andrew and hey Ali, okay, I could actually read the comments this time. Couldn't do that the last video. We talked a couple weeks ago about how Lyft was suing New York City for the cap that the city had put on drivers. And for those of you, hi Paula, that don't know what I'm talking about, New York City basically said, hey, you know what, there's too many drivers on the road. We're going to actually limit how many drivers you can have. And New York's kind of been like the most aggressive city, so to speak, about how many drivers you can have on the road because they've got very congested roads, and how much you can pay them because they believe you should be paid fairly, which I believe you should be paid fairly too. I don't know if capping is the way to do it, but, that's for them to decide, and that's for them to experiment with. Well, I know Lyft and Juno, actually, thank you, backseat driver, and they sued NYC over, I forgot if it was over the cap or over the minimum wage. I think it was both, actually. But basically, they said that they basically said that when you had like a minimum wage and then a cap, people are going to go to Uber more because reasons, I guess. Just reasons. To my knowledge, their argument didn't make much sense. It was just one of those, we disagree with this decision, therefore we are going to sue you over it. But as you're going to see right now, Uber is suing the city for pretty much the same. So there you go. Anyway, as it says right here, Uber filed a lawsuit on Friday to overturn New York City's first in the nation capping the number of ride-hail drivers that operates on its streets. The law, which went into effect last August, paused the insurance of new licenses to drivers for 12 months, but Uber wants the law overturned for fear that the city will ultimately make the cap permanent. Well, of course they want to make it permanent. That's, I mean, if it works, that's why they would do it. The law was part of a sweeping legislative package passed by New York City Council last summer to give regulators more control over e-hail companies. In addition to the cap, the City Council also approved a minimum pay standard among drivers. So that's what it is. It's a minimum pay standard. It's not a minimum wage like I keep mistakenly saying. With the goal of reducing how much time empty cars spend on the road. Supporters claim the cap is necessary to examine the impact of app-based cars on worsening traffic congestion in the city. But the cap amounts to a ban first, study later approach, Uber argues. According to the suit filed in the New York Supreme Court, they brought it straight to the Supreme Court of New York, rather than rely on alternatives supported by transportation experts and economists, the city chose to significantly restrict service growth and competition by the for-hire vehicle industry, which will have a disproportionate impact on residents outside of Manhattan who have long been underserved by yellow taxis and mass transit. The city made this choice in the absence of any evidence that doing so would meaningfully impact congestion, the problem the city was ostensibly acting to solve. Okay, you know what? Let's take a moment to pause right here. This is where, of course, Uber shows their ignorance, as always. They have done studies on this, Uber. They've done studies on this. They have shown that congestion is way worse with Uber and Lyft on the road, and Juno, because Juno's in New York too. They have shown that the drivers themselves admit that, with how much time is on the app, there's like a good 40% of that they're not driving a passenger. They're just sitting there, or they're idling in traffic. They have done the studies that show that there are too many cars on the road and that Uber and Lyft add to congestion. Now, is this convenient for the passengers? Well, of course it is if you just need a ride. Like, it's like New York is to the point where it's like, yeah, you tap your button on the Uber app and you just stand there and it's like, there it is. It's boop, boop, boop. Okay, now we can get in. So yeah, it is convenient for the customers to do that. But here's the thing. Oh, thank you, guy. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate that quite a bit. But here's the thing. Congestion was a big problem before Uber. It's a worse problem with Uber. And New York City is tired of there being more cars on the road than needs to be, and they're not even paying the drivers that well. So, and here's the other reason why I think that they added like a minimum, what's their term that they're calling it? I keep forgetting. I always call it a minimum wage. It's a minimum pay standard. That's what it is. Minimum pay standard. I think one of the reasons they actually forced a minimum pay standard was partially not because they felt that the drivers deserved to be paid better, although I'm sure they did. But it's also to see if, how should I put this? See, I lost my train of thought. This is the problem with doing it live. Oh, it was probably to see if the drivers would drive less hours. Because, hey, if you're guaranteed this much money per hour, then maybe you reach your goal 3 hours early. So you might go home sooner. I think that was another reason they implemented that. So, yeah, I think New York is definitely... And it will take a little while to experiment with this, to see if this experiment even pays off. Maybe capping the drivers doesn't lead to reduced congestion. Maybe the minimum pay doesn't result in people driving less. We don't know. We need some time to figure that out. And yeah, yeah, what gives Uber the right to just be... I mean, it's always interesting because I know people say, well, Kevin, you're a capitalist. I'm like, yes, I know, but you know what? Uber has always acted like they have a right to certain things, and it's like you don't have the right to take advantage of people, and that's what they've been doing. So when the city actually comes around and says, hey, you know what, we're going to put a little restriction on you because we think you're doing things that are unethical, and they cry foul, it's like, yeah, you don't cry foul when you screw the drivers or by deactivating them for false accusations, or you cut your pay. I'm actually considering doing another video about the new surge because ABC, for the first time, I mean, geez, this information's been common knowledge. ABC has reported that the new surge is expanding and it's going to cost the drivers thousands of dollars a year. And it's like, yeah, but Uber doesn't cry foul there. It's, in fact, they are like much more patronizing about it. So I don't feel sorry that this has happened to them. I feel sorry for the drivers if this does affect them, but, guy says, he says, this is a sophisticated and savvy way to disenfranchise each and every person who wants to be a chauffeur by targeting, controlling an individual's income. Well, yes, that's actually kind of how things work these days. I don't know if you've noticed, hopefully this doesn't get too political again, because I talked about AOC yesterday and the response, but yeah, it's kind of one of those things I think now where it's like, if you really want to hurt someone today, you don't do it legally. You don't do any other way except through hurting their finances. I mean, it's like, how should I put it? It's like you don't want them to learn their lesson. You don't even want them to go to jail necessarily if they do something wrong. It's like, you know what? Hurt their finances. If they're thinking something wrong, hurt their finances. That's how you win. At least that's the mentality. But you know what? That's getting a little off topic. Hence, that's why doing this live is hard sometimes. Let's continue a little bit. Let me press that. While wildly popular among riders, Uber is a source of almost constant grief for policymakers, disability advocates, taxi medallion holders, and driver groups. Critics complain that Uber and Lyft have been allowed to dominate the market without having to follow many of the same rules that apply to taxis, which, yeah, in all fairness, that's true. This has led to a glut of drivers that has overstripped demand, driving down wages and increasing traffic congestion. By the way, before taxis were regulated, this happened with the taxi industry. So people who say that Uber and Lyft need to go unregulated forever because it'll work itself out? No, it never worked out for the taxi industry. It's not going to work for Uber or Lyft. At the time, New York City's law capping the number of drivers was held as a potential model for other cities that want to rein in the ride-sharing industry. For NYC Mayor Bill de Blasio, the cap was also an opportunity for a do-over. He first proposed to limit the number of new Uber and Lyft vehicles in 2015, but ultimately dropped it after a bruising public relations battle with the app companies. Finding success the second time around, Blasio has said publicly he's inclined to keep the cap in place after the 12-month period expires. Well, yeah, because at the time, people weren't against Uber and Lyft like they are. Now they really are. Quote, "We're going to put ongoing caps in place on the for-hire vehicles, and we're going to work to increase the wages and benefits of the drivers," he said in a recent radio interview. Uber says this amounts to a post hoc rationalization of remedy the city appears to have already selected, according to the suite. A spokesperson for de Blasio did not immediately respond to requests for comment. A spokesperson for the city's law department declined to comment until the lawsuit had been filed. So anyway, then you have all this stuff about, stuff we already know about, quite frankly. So anyway, it is now, if I recall, now that I'm thinking about it, I think Uber is Uber's going to be suing New York City for the cap, and Lyft and Juno for the minimum pay. So that's interesting. I think that had Uber sued for the minimum pay, then that would have hurt Lyft and Juno's case as well. But either way, I don't see either of the suits winning. But hey, maybe you guys have a different opinion. Do you think this is correct? Lyft and Juno already lost. Oh, I'll have to look that up. If they lost, I'm gonna have to look that up. But yeah. Anyway, do you agree with these lawsuits? Do you agree with the companies, or do you agree with New York City? I would love to know. I mean, you can say quickly in the chat if you want. Or, boy, if I didn't have another video to make, I'd just see what everyone thought about this live. But I have another video to make in like a minute, so you know the drill. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy, oops, sorry about that, folks. If you enjoy my videos, consider becoming a Patreon member. It's totally optional, but even as little as $1 a month goes a long way to helping the channel run smoothly, and you get access to my exclusive Patrons exclusive blog. Oh, I will send love to Katie, Uber Girl Paula. And as always, flame responsibly, and I will see you in a